A Coloradan has won his election rigging defamation lawsuit against MyPillow guy Mike Lindell this afternoon. But former Dominion Voting Systems executive Eric Coomer did not win the overwhelming financial victory that he sought over Lindell in order to send a message to other election workers that they would be safe from election rigging accusations. Mike Lindell walked out of the federal courthouse in downtown Denver behind me about an hour ago, proclaiming victory, even after he and his company Frank Speech were hit with a $2.3 million defamation judgment. Opponents had asked the jury for far more, in excess of $60 million. And Lindell told me that even after he was found liable for defamation, he does not plan to stop with his accusations against Denver-based Dominion Voting Systems and its former executive. Claims that they'd both been involved in the largest crime in history and had committed treason.
Absolutely. What do you think? You would think I'm not going to tell them that they're blocking our elections from getting secure? I will keep up the fight. You know, am I going to say let's melt them down and turn them into prison bars? Yeah, probably.
The plaintiff's attorneys said in their closing that by hitting you with big punitive damages, it would send a message to election workers around the country. The jury chose not to do that. They didn't hit you with any punitive damages. They hit Frank Speech with some. What do you think the message the jury was trying to send? The
message is that, I know what message that Dominion and Smartmatic and Coomer are trying to send by their last statement was, hey, you need to hit Mike Lindell hard so we don't have people like him speaking out and with disinformation that they're saying is disinformation, right? That was his line. Well, I think the jury said, you know what? Free speech is alive and well in this country.
I asked Mike Lindell if he's got $2.3 million, because after all, time and again in this courthouse behind me, he told the jury that he was broke, that he has spent his whole $50 to $60 million fortune pursuing election rigging claims. And in fact, he says he's now $10 million in the hole. I asked him, you got $2.3 million? And after a bunch of bluster, he acknowledged, no, he doesn't have $2.3 million, but he plans to appeal the decision. The jurors decided that Lindell, crucially, did not conspire with his company MyPillow, which often was involved in promoting some of these claims, but they found not to the standard of civil conspiracy. So his company, his beloved company, is safe from this judgment. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger was in the courtroom with me today, and it's really wild because Mike Lindell lost. He comes out elated. You have folks in the election community who ostensibly were on the winning side today, but a lot of them must feel deflated that they didn't get the big judgment that would keep him from making claims like this against other companies and workers.
I mean, we're not going to hear from the Eric Coomer attorneys on camera, but in the hallway up there, his team was selling this as a victory, that they were excited with the verdict so far. But this decision, as we've noted, is just a fraction of what Eric Coomer's team was seeking. Let's go over the financials of this. The jury found Mike Lindell and his media company, Frank Speech, liable for defamation, a total of $2.3 million, when Coomer was asking for more than $62 million. I want you to look at the punitive damages part. Punitive damages are to punish the defendant, Lindell, and to serve as an example to others. And Coomer's team asked for $40 million as a message to keep good election workers in the profession. The jury awarded just $300,000. After the verdict, I spoke with Matt Crane of Colorado's County Clerks Association about the message $300,000 sends election workers.
What election officials have had to go through fighting these lies over the last 4.5 years has been something else. It's led to death threats, harassment. One of our pregnant clerks here in Colorado a couple of years ago, her life was threatened along with her unborn child. I can't overstate the impact that these lies have had. So to see only $300,000 come for that part of it is incredibly disappointing and, quite frankly, disturbing.
Eric Coomer only provided a statement following this verdict. It ended with, quote, hopefully Mike Lindell, listening to a jury of his peers, will finally start being honest with his followers. I am now one step closer to putting my life back together and thank the jury for their thoughtfulness and service. Thoughtfulness is a great word for what this jury did, Kyle, because this is a complicated case.
Yeah.
And the verdict itself is truly complicated, trying to decipher which claims they said he or the company is liable for and what they aren't and why the punishment is what it is in terms of financials. But as you heard from Matt Crane, if you're trying to send a message to election workers that we've got your back is what Eric Coomer's attorneys were saying. Hey, we've got your back. We have a victory in court. I don't know that a fraction of what you were seeking is the victory that these election workers need to hear to say, okay, I'm going to come back to that job that I was a little worried about.
Yeah, and as we've talked about since the beginning of this case, Marshall, the reason why this trial is important is because if Mike Lindell is telling the truth, that he has uncovered the biggest crime in history, it would be just that, the biggest crime in history, for which he has never provided solid proof. And on the flip side, if he's not telling the truth, then those election rigging claims are ruining the lives of Coloradans and endangering the lives of Coloradans, and that's why this trial was important to cover.
And it's not the only one. There have been other cases that have been settled from other companies that amplified the same claims, and there's still other trials still yet that we expect. Joe Altman still being sued for the claims he made that played a major role in this case, which started off the election rigging claims, and there are others that are still out there that Eric Coomer has taken a litany of people to court to try to be responsible for things that they said or amplified.
Yeah, I don't know that any amount of money put on a judgment finding Mike Lindell liable for defamation was going to stop him from saying those kinds of things, but $2.3 million is certainly not going to do it. Marshall Zellinger, thank you very much. Appreciate that. The city of Denver is currently suing the Trump administration again, this time for freezing federal funding. Denver and 4 other Democrat-led cities are suing the Trump administration for freezing funding that's meant to help prevent large-scale mass casualty incidents like terrorism incidents. This is security funding that is currently under threat. City leaders in Denver, Seattle, Chicago, Boston, San Francisco say the Department of Homeland Security has stopped reimbursing cities for security programs that detect and prevent nuclear or radiological threats. That funding is frequently used for security sweeps at large gatherings, sporting events, concerts, parades, even presidential campaign rallies like Donald Trump's visit to Aurora last year. Denver Mayor Mike Johnson's office says the city has paused all of the spending associated with this grant except for paying out its staff. According to the lawsuit, the city is now canceling scheduled safety trainings, putting off repairs of broken equipment used to detect nuclear and radiological material, and delaying the installation of a mobile security unit that is meant to monitor public events. This is the latest in a series of lawsuits that contest just how much control President Trump should have over previously authorized spending that was previously under the purview of Congress. According to the lawsuit, the cities were planning on using this grant funding for major events like the Super Bowl in San Francisco. Colorado's political leaders on both the left and the right condemned the political violence in Minnesota over the weekend. The assassinations of political leaders and their family members, attempted assassinations of others. So now the state is not only stepping up security for some elected leaders, they have also given candidates for public office a window in which they can try to scrub some of their personal information off of online databases. Colorado's Secretary of State's office said today that the state's campaign finance website, which is known as Tracer, was taken down today as a precaution. This is a website used by political journalists and campaigns and others, but it sometimes includes the home addresses of politicians, candidates, campaign donors. The Secretary of State's office says state and legislative leadership requested that that website come down temporarily to give legislators the opportunity to request that their personal information be redacted, which is something that is allowed by law. So this has been clear when we look at immigration enforcement around the country for some time, but now President Donald Trump is just coming right out and saying it. He is using mass roundups of immigrants as a tool to punish his perceived political opponents in Democrat-led blue cities and to protect his perceived political allies in various states as well as various industries. Advocates told our Mark Salinger they fear that LA-style immigration raids and military presence could be coming to Denver, and they see protests like last weekend's as a way to tell the community they should feel safe.
Everyone had their own reasons for being there.
I'm here to protest for immigrants' rights.
The main message that everyone's kind of just, protesting for what ICE is doing in the U.S. right now, especially out in LA.
In a time when videos of short clashes with police can overshadow hours of peaceful marches, organizers see protests as a way of showing support to a community that feels under attack.
We are committed to creating spaces where we can grieve together, where we can process together, where we can heal together.
Carlos Rojas Rodriguez helped organize a protest last week with the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. They marched against the ICE raids in California, knowing the focus could come to Colorado next.
We know that they're not targeting people with criminal records. In order to get to this 3,000 daily number, they have to target anybody who they think is an undocumented immigrant.
Federal agents targeted Aurora and Denver earlier this year, arresting people they say were in the country without documentation. ICE agents have been spotted at courthouses in Denver taking people into custody who arrived for meetings with immigration officials. And there were 2 raids at nightclubs, one in Adams County and another in Colorado Springs. And now there's more fear that ICE operations that brought the National Guard to Los Angeles could expand here.
We think that Colorado could be the next state. It is a moment to show solidarity for the immigrant community in LA and to also create a space for our own community here in Colorado.
So people protest.
The person sitting next to you, you never know, their parents could have been immigrants too.
And we are an essential part of the economy. We're an essential part of living in the United States. To terrorize us is to try to bring down a community that feeds you, a community that uplifts the United States.
We've seen how clashes with police can sometimes overshadow the messages that protest organizers are hoping to share by being out there. The mayor and police chief here in Denver both seem to have a very low tolerance for any violence in these protests, in part out of fear that it'll attract the attention of the president. Over the last 2 days of protest, Kyle, last week, we saw 54 people already arrested.
54 people after thousands upon thousands marched in Denver. I'm curious about momentum, Mark, and what the organizers are telling you about how often they think they can pull off a mass demonstration like that.
I think a lot of it will come with what we see happen. The president has said this weekend that he's hoping to expand immigration raids in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. A lot of immigration advocates feared or worried that they would come to Denver next. That still, of course, could happen. But if that does happen, I imagine that we'll see those protests continue to increase. Until then, no word on when those new protests might start. Kyle.
Mark Salinger, thank you very much. Your word of thanks generosity has now touched a new corner of Colorado. Last week, you raised more than $40,000 to benefit food banks in San Miguel and Montrose counties there in southwest Colorado. Through 5 years of giving, you have now raised more than $15 million for small to mid-sized nonprofits all across our state. This starts and ends with you. If you know of a nonprofit doing excellent work in your community, let us know. Email me at next@9news.com or text next 303-871-1491. A section of Loveland Pass is currently buried in dirt and mud. The folks digging it out aren't sure when it'll reopen.
A lot of our clients depend on SNAP to help make ends meet.
Food pantries are preparing to feed even more Coloradans with the possibility the federal government slashes SNAP benefits. Loveland Pass is currently closed as crews work to clear a landslide that buried about 100 feet of road in 200 feet of mud and dirt. This mess is about a mile into Clear Creek County. No one was caught in the slide, no vehicles either. Roads closed from just east of Arapahoe Basin to Loveland ski area, and there's no set time for when they think Loveland Pass is going to reopen.
Amazing pictures from Loveland Pass. We had another day with temperatures in the 90s, and now we're tracking isolated severe storms on the far eastern plains. Temperature now 92 in Denver, 100 in Lamar, 97 in Grand Junction. Severe thunderstorm watch out for western Nebraska. We've had wind advisories in Wyoming. Storms dropping out of Wyoming into Weld County have dropped 1-inch diameter hailstones. The cell no longer severe near Gaelton and Weldona, but we do have a new severe thunderstorm warning out for Cheyenne and Kit Carson counties and Yuma counties for another 20 minutes or so. That storm is tracking northeast and has the potential for damaging wind and large hail. Severe thunderstorm watch for Phillips County and Sedgwick County in northeastern Colorado, but concerns for high fire danger across the western slope. And of course, the air quality, not great. So we have an air quality alert that's posted through tomorrow afternoon. Temperatures in the 80s now, dropping into the 60s after midnight. 7-day forecast includes the chance for scattered strong storms tomorrow, but a much cooler day at 75 degrees. 80s on Wednesday, and then record highs in the triple digits as we start summer on Friday and we start your weekend on Saturday.
The Trump administration could cut billions of dollars in federal food benefits. Colorado's governor says the state does not have the money to fill that gap. And hey, just a reminder, you can catch Next streaming each night, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus. And Next is now a podcast, wherever you get those. The Trump administration could be cutting as much as $300 billion in SNAP benefits, federal food benefits. Colorado's governor says the state just does not have the budget wiggle room to fill that gap. Here's Angeline McCall.
People who rely on food banks already know how hard it is to make ends meet.
Puede escoger cualquier pan que usted quiera.
Juan Flores knows the feeling. He's a volunteer here and one of the more than 600,000 Coloradans that use SNAP.
Stretching it out anymore is not really, it doesn't happen.
His SNAP allowance has already been cut from $292 per month to $178.
If I didn't have the help from the food bank, yeah, I'd be struggling at the end of the month.
SNAP recipients are already seeing changes, and that's before more potential federal cuts to the SNAP program. The One Big Beautiful bill going through Congress would slash somewhere around $300 billion to SNAP, money the Trump administration says can be made up by the states. In response, Democratic Governor Jared Polis penned this letter to Congress saying Colorado would have to make up at least $200 million, maybe more. He called it an unmitigated financial burden that would likely require cuts to SNAP and cuts to other state programs to make up that money.
You know, we've come up with plans, like if the funding gets cut, what do we do? What's the first thing to go?
Joyce Newfield is the executive director here. She knows cuts would mean changes they would not want to make.
Well, you know, for us, it would mean we would be we couldn't serve the entire Denver metro area. We'd have to cut it back to we're only going to serve this area. We would be giving them less food.
And if distributing less food, it will make it that much harder for those already on the edge to make ends meet.
It cuts back on a lot of the stuff that I consider basically essential.
Joyce with Community Ministry of Southwest Denver says because of federal changes, they've already seen a reduction in grant money, leading them to purchase items like meat every month, which wasn't something that they had previously done. The state did not specify in that letter what would be on the hook if Colorado wants to pay more for SNAP benefits and cut elsewhere. Kyle?
And Angeline, I understand some of these families have already seen reductions in benefits unrelated to what the Trump administration or Republicans in Congress are planning. So, I mean, how low could some of these benefit amounts go?
Yeah, you heard one there talk about going from around $290 to $178. And Joyce was saying that this is something that families are experiencing across the board. So when you really look at those numbers already, when you talk about deeper cuts, their concern is, well, how much lower could those numbers go? And would that really help me at all? I mean, it might be a small dent, but nowhere near what they may need to really get food on the table every single day.
Angeline McCall, appreciate your reporting. On the road or back at home in the studio, you get the final word. Your feedback next. Some of your feedback on the $2.3 million defamation judgment against MyPillow guy Mike Lindell today. Elmer on X says that $2.3 million is an insignificant settlement. He may indeed see an increase in business from this. Elmer, I would tend to agree. Brett follows on to that, says MAGA and the MyPillow faithful will reward that company multitudes of that. So again, he will appeal, be like Trump, held as a hero to the right. All of this in a blue state, blue city, huge win for Lindell. I sat in that trial every day, and I think it's really tough to argue with that logic. Mike Lindell ducked a big one today. We'll see you next time.